Oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, please turn your phones to silent. Here's my very good friend, Lynne Champion.
Woo! Woo! Woo-hoo!
Testing. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. Got to keep it quite close to there.
You know how to do that. Greetings and welcome everyone to the Melbourne launch of Champion Tales here at Readings Books in downtown St Kilda. So, I've been asked recently, why did I write a book? Well, I left home at the age of 16 and the stories have been unfolding ever since. And I'm sharing a tale or two over a drink or two or more. People have often said, oh my God, you should write a book. What amazing stories. So we did. Here we are, and I'm so excited. Now that would be the first time that I've ever actually listened to anyone. Just ask my mother. So many years ago, when I first put pen to paper, was back in the 80s, where I found myself in a war zone in Hebron, and it was history in the making. And even way back then, oh, by the way, I had 25 machine guns pointed directly at me, and this is the CEO, by the way. And way back then, friends decided that they would come up with a title for the book called, you're not going to believe this, but ... which came about because I would be gallivanting around the world, having way too much fun and getting into all sorts of trouble, and at some point would call home. And my opening line would be, oh my God, you're not going to believe this, but... And then I would go on to tell some amazing story, situation or circumstance that I got myself into. It does appear that trouble seems to find me, or I find it. And I still use those same words today because the stories keep coming. Now, whilst I've absolutely loved living this life, writing about it hasn't exactly been a day at the beach. Especially when it comes to the detail, dates, times, places, names. I can hardly remember what happened yesterday, let alone many years ago. But I do share one story in the book where I'd been travelling the globe for about 3 months or so and had the pleasure of staying at Michel Girard's Michelin 3-star hotel restaurant in France. And on checking out the following morning, I had to write the date. Well, of course, I didn't know. So turning to reception, I said, so what's today? She said, it's Tuesday. I said, oh, and what's the date? And she said, it's the 17th. And I pondered that for a moment and said, and what month would that be? So there was a gentleman standing behind, also waiting to check out, and he'd heard the conversation. And he said, excuse me, I don't know what you've been doing or where you've been, but if you can't remember the month you're in, you must be having way too much fun. Well, now, wasn't that the truth? There's another chapter which is titled All Things Irish, which was a trip to Ireland, whereby soon after I picked up an Irish truck driver, Paddy. Paddy was in his 50s, still lived at home with his mother, had never been married, a good Catholic boy. So little did he know what he was getting himself into. We travelled all through Ireland, England, France and Spain in this massive semi-trailer, and we slept in the truck on the odd occasion. Now, crucial to this story was a small, remote fishing village in the northern part of the Bay of Biscay in the Basque region of Spain. Now, my very dear friend Christine Barker of 40 plus years, who is here with us this evening. Chrissy, put your hand up, stand up. Here's Christine, and who, by the way, was presented with a manuscript totally unfit for publication. Chrissy decides that she is going to Google map the whole of the northern coastline of Spain, looking for this remote fishing village. Well, talk about trying to find a needle in a haystack. And at this point, I'm thinking she's nearly as mad as me. Or maybe not. So Chrissy Googles away, and she's showing me town after town. I would say, no, that one's too big, that one's too small, no, nothing looks familiar there. And so this went on and on and on until one looked vaguely familiar. So we Googled in closer and closer and closer until we could actually see this little port. Now, I do have to say that we had photographs, so there was a photograph of this little rather quaint, unusual arched bridge that divided this little port. So as we Google in, we both screeched at the same time. Oh my God, there's the bridge. We couldn't believe it. We laughed ourselves silly. We were so excited. We had found the bridge, and we found our remote fishing village. Now, for the sake of storytelling, I should probably say that we opened a nice bottle of champagne to celebrate. But in fact, I think we put the kettle on for a nice hot cuppa, and we kept going because we had another 30-something chapters that all had to be tweaked and addressed in the same way. So, when you get to All Things Irish, and you read about our little remote fishing village, smile for our Irish truck driver, Paddy. Now, there are 5 genres to the book. There are 42 chapters broken down into 5 categories. We have food and wine, travel, business as usual, because I've been an entrepreneur most of my life, and there's some doozy tales to tell there. We have dating, and more recently, cougar dating. Well, I could write a whole book on that. And the 5th one is schmoozing. And schmoozing came about because all through the book, I kept using this word. Because I had to schmooze my way into situations, i.e. Academy Awards, Michael Jackson's Memorial, MasterChef USA, Royal Ascot for Black Caviar, to name just a few. But I also had to schmooze my way out of situations or big trouble. Now let's see what comes to mind there. Customs, Border Control, the IRS, Internal Revenue Service for the United States of America, the odd judge here and there. Oh, and jail comes to mind. Now, I know some of you will be thinking, as you're reading, this woman is crazy. I prefer to call it living life to the fullest, taking the odd risk here and there, not necessarily calculated, taking on challenges, and just having fun and enjoying along the way. Timing is everything. I don't want you to call me to say, A, you found a typo. After the 149th proofread, I can tell you I'm completely over it. B, don't call me to ask, now Lynn, did you sleep with so-and-so in the book? Names have been changed to protect the guilty. And you know what? Read between the lines. And C, don't go immediately to all the smutty stuff. The 50 Shades of Champion. Remember Maria and the girls in Do Re Mi? Let's start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. Which reminds me, a male friend who attended the Sydney launch called me before he'd even got home from the function to say, well, I'm just loving the bit about penis size. Well, that's on page 178. Weren't you listening? And D, some of you are mentioned in the book. And for those of you who aren't, could I suggest that you try that much harder for the next one? Now, I love questions and I'm going to ask you to partake. But before I do, there are two people that I would particularly like to thank. And one is Christine Barker, who you've already met, sort of. Chrissy, I'll get emotional. I know I won't be able to stop myself. Anyway.
Repeat after me. I'm not writing another book.
I'll be able to talk her into it.
It has to be a volume 2.
It'll be a box set by the time we're finished.
Chrissy, we laughed and we cried, but mostly we laughed all the way through it. And I could not have done it without you. And I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now, and I would also like to thank Ken Phillips. Ken, put your hand up. I didn't recognise him because he's all smart in a structure. Normally I see Ken in his doggy walking clothes because one of his many hats is that he has a dog walking business. Mm-hmm. And if any of you are in need of this service, if only I could train my men the same way on cue. I was going to say, if any of you are in need of this service and you require a reference, could I suggest that you talk to the CEO, Cosmo. Just tied up this. Now, Ken handles all of our social media and he does an amazing job. But he has an additional arduous task of dealing with a client, who knows zero, nothing about social media. And Ken has to talk to me like he's talking to a 7-year-old. It's a classic. But he does it with such diplomacy. And we have our very, very early morning emails back and forth, and I can just picture Ken with his coffee, scratching his head and saying to himself, oh my God, how did that woman get to be where she is today?
I don't know how you can read minds.
And I would also like to thank Readings Books for hosting our function tonight. It's so important for us to support independent retailers.
Yes.
If we don't, one day they won't be here.
Yes.
But the staff here are friendly, warm, fuzzy, helpful, knowledgeable. And thank you so much. And thank you all for being here this evening. Your friendship and support means a great deal to me. And thank you for coming along tonight. Now I'm going to have a glass of champagne. Does anyone need a top? And we'll hand a microphone to whoever would like to, if you put your hand up, and whoever would like to ask a question. Great, thank you. Stand by.
Hello, darling Lynne. Hi. Quick question for you. What is your most memorable occasion? Most memorable.
Oh, not a very tough question.
Talk about being put on the spot. You asked the question. Memorable. Oh. There are so many. I actually, you know, in the book, the stories all about gift giving are some of the most precious to me. There's just some wonderful moments where either I've been given a gift or I've given a gift. And in the book, I think that and I can't really sort of go into them all, but there's some fabulous ones. There's a pen story where this pen got, you know, moved around and went all around the world and came back to me at some point. And I think that gift giving would be one. You know, attending Michael Jackson's memorial was very, you know, precious to me because I was like a fan of his and managed to get there, and it was a very moving experience. My ex-husband, and there's a whole love story in the book about him that is just a fabulous story. And whenever I tell the story, people will say, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" And male or female, people will say, "Oh, it's giving me goosebumps." There's so many. Read the book. Anyone else with a question?
Thank you, Lynne. I haven't read your book. I've heard a little bit about you. But what I'd like to know is where you go from here. Like, what can you sort of say to the youth of today about your experiences? Can you give them some advice about? Obviously, it's very inspiring. No, not I think you've got something to say. You've been there and you've lived life. So you may have, you would have something to say about life and living it. You've obviously got a moral code somewhere in there. And I think it'd be nice to be able to pass that on. There you go. Go for it.
Well, it's sort of like a bit of a twofold, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a bit.
So going forward, I'd love to be, you know, I'd love to live to be 100, and so that's sort of kind of a bit of a goal for me to, you know, take good care of myself, exercise, eat properly and all of that. So I see myself as being this lovely old elegant lady and still out and about and doing things, maybe minus the stilettos. But to young people, you know, I was born an entrepreneur, and it's one of the things that I feel so blessed about, because I think that you know, you can't make someone be an entrepreneur, and I just can't imagine my life any other way. And so, you know, basically for young people, it is about, you know, being focused and finding what it is that you really want to do and what drives you and inspires you. And at the end of the day, it is all about hard work. And unfortunately, I think that there's a lot of people that don't want to do it. But you really do need to put in the hard yards and be focused.
Good answer.
And then I'll just the sequel to Prisoner is about to hit our screens.
Yeah.
Confirm or deny that that's based on your jail time?
My jail time was actually short and sweet, but still scary. But I could probably help them write one of their, you know.
Cameo.
Lynne, I'm only halfway through the book, but
I want to know where the real passion came for the cooking, because I've got you coming from Hobart into Melbourne, and then the next minute you're in Sydney, and the next minute you're at Michelin restaurant. So where did that passion kick off for the cooking?
Great question. Well, I'm going to be really honest here and tell you we left out some stuff. It's not Christine's fault, it's my fault. I'm saying, we've got to get this to the publisher now. Let's go, night and day, night and day, night and day. And then afterwards I'd say, Chrissy, we left out all the blah, blah, blah. And she goes, well, you know, like we're under the pump. Because I left home at the age of 16, I had no money. And so I had to learn to cook because I couldn't afford to eat out. And so I learned to cook all the basic home cooking on a budget. And then it was the very first time. I have great childhood memories too of my grandmother making hot cross buns, making vanilla ice cream, and my mother, who's still upset about the book because I think I say in there somewhere, when I did MasterChef in America, and they said, what was the biggest influence in your cooking? I said, definitely not my mother. She hasn't got over that. Anyway, whatever. But it was the very first time that I went overseas, and it was the moment of sitting down at a 3-star Michelin restaurant and having the most exquisite food. I had no idea what I was eating. But that sort of then sent me on this journey, and now I just absolutely love it. And I've cooked, you know, I had the guest house for 8 years. That came about because I thought, well, okay, I have this love of food, I have this love of travelling and eating, but I've never actually done it professionally. And I thought, you know what, I think I need to tick that off the to-do list, which is why I then opened a guest house restaurant. But having done that, because that's really, that's a tough business, especially when you're the host, you're the chef, running this whole property. And unfortunately now, I don't want to cook. But I keep the economy going because I eat out 6 nights a week. So I still love food, but I don't cook much anymore. Now, there were lots of hands up.
Have you not read your book? When's the next one? Next one.
Still can't hear you.
Okay. Writing this book, I mean, look, I won't bore you with all the details, but honestly, it just did my head in. Oh.
There's got to be more left in you.
I know, well, I'm getting to that. So at the time, but now that we've actually got, you know, a book in our hot little hands and I'm relaxed, so now I just, the fun part starts because I have a glass of champagne in my hand and a pen in the other, and I just go around and do book signings and launches, and I'm absolutely loving it. Meeting lots of really interesting people and just chatting away about their lives and hearing my stories. I've also done some mentoring since I've launched the book, and I'm really enjoying that. Never had time for any of that before. But in answer to your question, I said to Christine, get a gun and shoot me if I ever say I'm going to write another book. But then what happened, we did the first launch in Sydney, and we did 2 launches in Sydney at the same bookshop over 2 nights because we had too many people. And there were things that happened on the first night and there were things that happened on the second night. And I called Chrissy and I said, Chrissy, I know, but we've already got the first chapter of the next book from the launch of this one. But if I could share a little snippet of the second book launch, which goes back to not remembering dates, times, names, etc. So you can imagine the setting like this, except we were outside the bookstore and people were inside and outside. So busy signing, there was a line of people. And because I can't remember people's names, I thought I was like really smart, and I even have it here today. So I had this little piece of paper in my pocket, and on one side it listed people who I thought, there's no way I'm going to remember that person's name on the night. So I wrote down all these names. And then I wrote down my little speech and had a little, which went flying out the window, of course. And so on the night, this is on the second night, Ursula, my manager, where is she? There, with the hand up. Ursula runs all of the accessory stores, so I flew Urs up for the launch, and so she is flat out, running around, pouring champagne with a platter of chicken sandwiches in the other, and it was so full on. We had a line of people. I'm signing. I even got smarter now, and I even write little notes about what I might want to say to people, etc. We're getting better at all of this. But anyway, so towards the end, there was this one girl still waiting to have her book signed, and they were asking us to go inside for the talk. And during the evening, I'd said to her, I would just say, excuse me just one moment, and I would run past Urs, girl in the cobalt jacket, name, guy in the green shirt, name, and she'd come back and go, Tom, Debbie. Right, great. So that went on all night. These are people that I might have met once or whatever, so forgive me. So they get everyone into the bookshop. And I'm looking for Urs because I've got this one person left. And I had dinner with her 6 or 7 months ago. She was a friend of a friend. And I'm thinking, oh, God, help me. I just couldn't remember her name. And I couldn't reach Urs. She's like way at the back of the store. And I thought, okay, so thinking on my feet, stilettos. So I opened the book. I thought, I'm screwed because there's no way. I don't remember her name. So I said, how do I spell your name? And she said, Sue. Well, guess what? I went that colour. Oh my God, because everyone, you can spell a name, another way, a Y, an I, an E, or Sue. Anyway, do we have another question?
Hi, Lynne. Hi, Lynne. You've obviously led a very interesting life, and I haven't read your book yet, but I'll probably read it tonight. But do you have any regrets at all over your lifetime thus far? Obviously not.
That's a great question. I haven't been asked that one before. Any regrets? Look, I'm sure we have them. But anything that I could even come up with right now, I would say no. I know that I am a much better person today than I was, say, even back in the 80s. Because you learn by your mistakes, and hopefully we learn and we grow from them. And I actually I quite like who I am today, because I, go to bed at night, put my head on the pillow, wake up the next morning, and I'm very comfortable and happy that I've done all I can do in a day. Regrets? Not really, because, I could say, yes, my first marriage, but I needed to do that because I used to think I was bulletproof. So I needed some things to happen to become a better person. But I would say, no. I think we all have little moments where you go, oh, you know what, I shouldn't have said that. I go off at the mouth. But they're just like little things. I think we all do that. But No, not really.
What about when you took a can and it was hairspray?
Oh, well, actually that missed out on the book. Missed out on this book. But being very single and dating and going out every night and, you know, working hard, playing hard. And so I quickly got ready one night and no time to wash the hair, so I grabbed the hairspray and went, I'm thinking, what's this hairspray? This is crap. And then so I go out that night and I come home the next day and I look in the cup and I thought, oh shit, it was Glen 20. So of course, you know, I like to laugh at my own expense, so I sent a whole email off to the Inner Sanctum friends with a photo with the hair all and the can of Glen 20. Should that go in the next book?
Yeah.
Lynne, we've got the book to read about where you've been. What about where you're going?
Well, I touched on that I would love to live to be 100 and be this elegant old lady and still being able to be out and about and doing all of that. I will always work because I need that. I think that as long as I can, I will always work. And I, as I mentioned before, I'm doing a little bit of mentoring, and I'm absolutely loving that. I find it very rewarding. And I'm working with a lot more charities. And can I say, I just like to do more of the same. Anyone else? One more.
What star sign are you?
Aries.
Oh.
Fire. Although I've mellowed. What are you? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And if you're not rushing off, I really didn't get a chance to say hello to everyone. I didn't get a chance to have a little bit of a chit-chat, and I would love to do that. So I think there's even some people I haven't met yet. So thank you again for coming along, and thank you for the questions. Love that.